Until she saw his gentle heart, nobody wanted to be the mountain man's wife. The village rested quietly between tall mountains, where the air was cold and the roads were narrow and rough. Life there was simple, but never easy. People worked hard, every day, growing food, caring for animals, and preparing for long winters. Everyone knew everyone else, and news traveled fast. In such a small place, a person's name could become their story, whether it was true or not. At the edge of the village, near the thick forest and steep rocks, lived a man people called the Mountain Man. His small wooden house stood alone, far from other homes. Smoke rose from his chimney every morning and evening, showing that he was alive and working, but few people ever went near his door. Children were warned not to wander too close. Women avoided looking in his direction. Men spoke of him in low voices. The Mountain Man was tall and broad, with a body shaped by years of hard labor. His face was rough, marked by deep lines from sun, wind, and time. A thick beard covered much of his face, and his eyes were dark and serious. He rarely smiled, not because he was unkind, but because smiling had never been easy for him. He spoke only when necessary, and when he did, his words were few and simple. People did not fear him because he had done something wrong. They feared him because they did not understand him. He did not join village gatherings. He did not sit and talk for hours like others did. He did not laugh loudly or share stories. He worked, he survived, and he kept to himself. In a place where everyone depended on one another, his distance felt strange. Rumors slowly grew, as they always do. Some said he had a dark past. Others believed he had once lost everything and never recovered. A few claimed he chose to live alone because he did not trust people. No one truly knew the truth, but the stories became more interesting than reality. Over time, the Mountain Man became less of a person and more of a warning. Yet, despite his silence, the village depended on him more than they admitted. When a storm blocked the mountain path, he was the first to clear it. When a roof collapsed under heavy snow, he helped repair it without asking for anything in return. If an animal wandered into dangerous terrain, he often guided it back. He never demanded thanks. He simply did what needed to be done and returned to his quiet life. Still, kindness done quietly is easy to ignore. Whenever marriage was discussed, his name never came up seriously. Mothers whispered that no woman would survive living with such a man. Some laughed and said he was too wild, too cold, too distant. Others said he would never want a wife anyway. The idea of being the Mountain Man's wife became something people joked about, never considering that there was a real man behind the name. The Mountain Man heard these things, of course. In a small village, silence does not protect you from words. He never argued, never corrected anyone. He accepted the image people had created of him because fighting it felt pointless. After years of being misunderstood, he learned that explaining himself changed nothing. So he focused on his work and his routine, finding comfort in predictable days. Every morning before sunrise, he woke up and prepared for the cold. He checked his tools, stepped outside, and breathed in the sharp mountain air. He walked long distances, carrying heavy loads with steady strength. He knew the land better than anyone else. He respected it, and it respected him in return. In the mountains, carelessness could cost a life, so he moved with patience and attention. At night, he returned home tired but calm. He cooked simple meals, fixed what was broken, and sat quietly by the fire. His house was clean, organized, and warm. Everything had its place. There was no chaos inside his walls, only peace. But no one knew this. To the village, his home was a mystery, just like him. Loneliness did visit him, especially during long winter nights. He felt it when he watched other homes glow with light and laughter. He felt it when he heard distant voices carrying through the cold air. But he had learned to live with that feeling instead of fighting it. Loneliness, for him, was safer than rejection. He never imagined himself as someone's husband. Not because he didn't want companionship, but because he believed no one would choose him willingly. Years of being avoided had taught him that lesson well. He accepted that some people are meant to walk alone, even if their hearts are capable of more. In the village, life continued as usual. Seasons changed, children grew, elders passed on, and stories repeated themselves. The Mountain Man remained the same quiet figure moving in the background, seen but never truly noticed. People assumed they knew him, and that assumption was enough for them. What no one realized was that their fear was built on absence, not truth. They had never sat with him, never shared a meal, never asked him about his life. They judged him by his silence, his rough hands, and his distant home. They mistook calm for coldness and strength for danger, and so, when fate quietly began to move, no one expected that the man everyone avoided would soon become the center of a story that challenged everything the village believed. At this point, he was still just a mountain man, alone, misunderstood, and unseen. But beneath the rough surface was a heart shaped by hardship, waiting for someone brave enough to look past fear and see what had always been there. The young woman lived on the other side of the village in a small house that once felt warm but had slowly become heavy with worry. Her days were filled with quiet work and careful thinking. She was not weak, but life had pressed her down little by little. Loss and responsibility had arrived too early, leaving her with choices that never felt fair. People in the village knew her as polite and calm. She spoke softly, helped others when she could, and never complained in public. Behind closed doors, however, her nights were restless. She worried about the future, about security, and about how long kindness alone could protect her. In the village, a woman without strong support always stood on uncertain ground. Marriage was often spoken of around her, but never in hopeful ways. Some suggested matches that came with conditions she could not accept. Others spoke as if she should feel grateful for any offer at all. She listened, nodded, and stayed quiet. She was not dreaming of romance or grand promises. She only wanted stability, respect, and a place where she could breathe without fear. As time passed, the whispers grew louder. People began to say she was running out of time. Others said she was too careful, too thoughtful, too slow to decide. Every word felt like a weight added to her chest. She tried to ignore them, but it was hard to escape voices in a small village. One evening, a relative mentioned the mountain man. The words were spoken lightly, almost as a joke, but they stayed with her. She had heard the stories, of course. Everyone had. The quiet man in the mountains, the one nobody truly knew. The suggestion shocked her at first, and fear rose quickly. She imagined a cold home, a harsh life, and endless silence. The idea felt overwhelming. That night she could not sleep. She stared at the ceiling, listening to the wind outside, thinking about her limited choices. Every path before her seemed difficult. Some led to dependence, others to uncertainty. None felt right. And yet, strangely, her mind kept returning to the mountain man. She realized something important. Everything she knew about him came from others, not from herself. She had never spoken to him. She had never seen how he lived. All she knew were stories shaped by fear and guesswork. That thought disturbed her more than the idea of meeting him. The next day, she began to notice him more. She saw him from a distance, carrying heavy loads with steady steps. She watched as he helped an older man fix a fence without being asked. He did not linger or seek attention. He simply worked and moved on. There was no anger in his actions, no roughness in the way he treated others. Her curiosity slowly grew stronger than her fear. When the topic of marriage returned, she surprised everyone by not refusing immediately. She asked questions instead. How did he live? What kind of man was he really? People answered with uncertainty, repeating old rumors, but none could point to a single moment where he had caused harm. That silence spoke louder than their warnings. Finally, she made a decision that felt both frightening and brave. She asked to meet him. The village reacted with shock. Some tried to stop her, saying she was making a mistake. Others looked at her with pity. No one believed the meeting would go well. She listened politely, but her mind was already made up. She needed to see the truth with her own eyes. The meeting was arranged simply, without ceremony or drama. She walked toward his home with careful steps, her heart beating fast. The path was quiet, surrounded by trees and stone. Every sound felt louder in the stillness. When she reached his door, she paused, took a breath, and knocked. He opened the door slowly, surprise clear on his face. For a moment, neither of them spoke. She noticed his tired eyes, his rough hands, and the calm way he stood. There was no anger there, no threat, only confusion and quiet attention. She introduced herself, her voice steady despite her nerves. He listened closely, nodding once. He invited her inside with a simple gesture. The house was warm and clean, just like any other home. A fire burned softly, and everything was in order. They sat across from each other, separated by silence at first. Then she spoke honestly. She told him why she had come, without blame or expectation. She explained her situation, her worries, and her desire for a life built on respect. She did not ask for promises. She asked only for truth. He listened without interrupting. When she finished, he took a long moment before speaking. His voice was low but gentle. He told her he was not an easy man to know. He spoke of his simple life, his work, and his belief in quiet days. He did not hide his past struggles, but he did not dramatize them either. He made no effort to impress her. What surprised her most was what he did not say. He did not pressure her. He did not demand anything. He made it clear that the choice was hers alone. If she walked away, he would understand. That honesty stayed with her long after she left his home. In the days that followed, she thought deeply. She weighed fear against facts, rumors against reality. The mountain man was quiet, yes, but not unkind. Isolated, but not careless. He offered no fantasy, only stability and respect. For the first time in a long while, the future did not feel completely dark. When she finally agreed, it was not because she felt trapped. It was because she felt seen. The village reacted with disbelief. Some shook their heads, others whispered warnings, but she stood firm. This was her decision, made with open eyes. As preparations began, the mountain man remained calm and reserved. He did not celebrate loudly or boast. He continued his work as usual, quietly adjusting his life to include another person. Though neither of them spoke of love, something important had already begun. A connection built not on fear or desperation, but on understanding. After the marriage, life did not change in loud or dramatic ways. There were no celebrations that lasted for days, no music filling the mountains, and no crowd gathering to wish them happiness. The ceremony was simple and quiet, just like the man himself. When everything was done, the woman left the village behind and walked with her husband toward his home in the mountains. The path felt different now. The same trees stood tall, the same stones lined the road, but her thoughts were heavier. She wondered what awaited her beyond that door she had visited only once before. Fear tried to return, but she pushed it away, reminding herself why she had chosen this path. She had not chosen stories. She had chosen truth. When they reached the house, he opened the door and stepped aside, allowing her to enter first. It was a small gesture, but she noticed it. Inside, everything was clean and prepared. There was space cleared for her belongings, a folded blanket placed carefully near the fire, and fresh water waiting on the table. Nothing was said, yet everything spoke. The first days passed slowly. They moved around each other carefully, like two people learning a new rhythm. He woke early and left for work before sunrise, just as he always had. She prepared simple meals and explored her new surroundings. The silence between them was not uncomfortable, but it was unfamiliar. She sometimes wondered if this was how it would always be. What surprised her most was how much space he gave her. He never questioned where she went or what she did, never stood too close or spoke too sharply. When they shared meals, he waited for her to eat first. When she spoke, he listened without distraction. His respect was quiet, but steady. At night, they sat near the fire, each lost in their own thoughts. Sometimes she wanted to ask questions, but did not know where to begin. He never forced conversation, but when she finally spoke, he answered honestly. Slowly, the silence began to feel less like distance and more like peace. She started to notice small things. He repaired broken tools instead of throwing them away. He stored extra food for winter, not only for themselves but also for animals that might struggle in the cold. He moved carefully through the forest, never taking more than he needed. His strength was controlled, guided by patience rather than force. Days turned into weeks. She learned his routine, and he adjusted his life to include her without complaint. He built a small shelf for her things. He brought back items from the village that he noticed she might need. He remembered what she liked to eat, and prepared it without being asked. These were not grand gestures, but they mattered. One afternoon, a sudden storm swept through the mountains. The wind grew strong and the sky darkened quickly. She felt uneasy, unsure how such storms were handled so far from the village. Without panic, he secured the house, checked the roof, and made sure everything was safe. His calm presence eased her fear. In that moment, she realized she felt protected, not controlled. As time passed, her worries slowly softened. She slept better at night. Her mind was quieter. The pressure she had carried for years began to lift. She was no longer surrounded by judging eyes or constant advice. Here, she was simply herself. The villagers noticed changes too. When she visited, she no longer looked tired or uncertain. She spoke with more confidence and moved with ease. People were confused. This was not what they expected. They had assumed she would regret her choice, that she would return unhappy or afraid. Instead, she seemed calm. The mountain man, too, began to change in small ways. He spoke a little more. His posture relaxed. The walls he had built over years of isolation slowly lowered, brick by brick. He found comfort in knowing someone shared his space without judgment. One evening, as they worked together preparing food, she accidentally cut her hand. It was a small injury, but his reaction surprised her. He moved quickly yet gently, cleaning the wound and wrapping it carefully. His hands, rough from years of labor, were steady and kind. He showed concern without panic, care without words. That night, she understood something important. His silence was not emptiness. It was restraint. He had learned to hold back because life had taught him that words could be misunderstood and emotions could be used against him. Silence had been his shield. She began asking him about his past, slowly and carefully. He did not share everything at once. Some stories were still painful, but over time pieces came together. He spoke of loss, of hard lessons, of choosing isolation because it was safer than hoping for acceptance. He never blamed anyone. He simply stated facts. She listened, offering understanding rather than pity. She did not try to change him or fix his past. She accepted it as part of who he was. That acceptance meant more to him than she realized. The relationship grew quietly. There were no dramatic declarations, but there was trust. There was comfort. There was a growing sense of belonging. They learned to read each other's moods without words. A shared glance, a small nod, a gentle pause said, "Enough." The house that once felt lonely now felt alive. Not noisy, not crowded, but warm. Laughter began to appear in small moments. A smile during meals, a shared joke while working. These moments, though simple, carried great meaning. The village still whispered, but their voices mattered less now. What mattered was the life being built in the mountains, day by day. A life rooted in respect, patience, and understanding. By the end of those early months, the woman no longer felt like a visitor in his world. She felt at home. And the mountain man, once known only as a figure of fear, had begun to rediscover something he thought he had lost forever, the quiet joy of sharing life with someone who truly saw him. The true test of their life together came quietly, without warning. One morning the woman woke up feeling weak and dizzy. At first she tried to ignore it, thinking it was just tiredness. Life in the mountains required strength, and she did not want to complain. But as the hours passed, her condition did not improve. Her steps became slow and her face lost its color. He did not panic or raise his voice. He guided her to sit near the fire and brought her water. He listened carefully as she explained how she felt. Without wasting time, he adjusted his plans for the day. Work could wait. Her well-being could not. He stayed close, watching her with quiet concern. As the day went on, her weakness grew stronger. She tried to smile and tell him she would be fine, but he could see the truth. He prepared warm food, helped her rest, and made sure she was comfortable. When night came, he stayed awake, adding wood to the fire and checking on her often. In those long hours, she saw a side of him few people had ever witnessed. His movements were gentle and careful. His eyes never left her face for long. He spoke softly, offering reassurance without making promises he could not keep. His presence alone brought her comfort. The next morning, he made a difficult decision. The village was far, and the path was rough, but she needed help. He wrapped her carefully in warm coverings and prepared for the journey. The weather was cold, and the road was steep, but he did not hesitate. He carried her with steady strength, step by step, protecting her from the harsh wind. The journey was slow, but his determination never weakened. He stopped when she needed rest and spoke to her gently to keep her awake. By the time they reached the village, people were shocked. They had never seen him like this, focused, caring, and deeply concerned for another person. With help from others, she was cared for and allowed to recover. During those days, the mountain man remained nearby, waiting quietly outside, refusing to leave. He asked no questions and made no demands. He was simply there. The villagers began to talk, but this time their words were different. They spoke of his patience, his strength, and the way he never left her side. Some felt shame for judging him unfairly. Others were confused, realizing that the man they feared was not the man before them now. When she finally returned home with him, stronger and smiling again, something had changed, not only between them, but within the village itself. Life in the mountains resumed, but it carried new meaning. She felt gratitude that went deeper than words. She had trusted him, and he had proven worthy of that trust in every way. She no longer wondered if she had made the right choice. She knew she had. One evening, as they sat together near the fire, she thanked him. Her voice was soft but clear. He looked surprised, then thoughtful. After a pause, he spoke more than he usually did. He told her that caring for her did not feel like duty. It felt natural. For the first time in years, he had someone whose presence gave his life new purpose. That night, he shared more of his past than ever before. He spoke of a time when he had trusted people and been deeply hurt. I would be so happy, he explained, how loss had taught him to stay distant, how silence had become safer than hope. He had chosen the mountains because they asked nothing and judged no one. She listened with full attention. She did not interrupt or question his choices. She understood that his quiet nature was not weakness, but protection. She placed her hand gently over his, offering comfort without words. That small gesture meant more than any speech. From that day on, their bond grew stronger. They faced daily challenges together, supporting one another without fear. She helped him reconnect with parts of life he had left behind, while he gave her the steady foundation she had always needed. The villagers began to change as well. They greeted him differently now, with respect instead of fear. Some asked for his help directly instead of whispering behind his back. Children waved at him when he passed. Though he remained quiet, he acknowledged them with small nods and calm smiles. He did not seek acceptance, but it came anyway. One day, during a village gathering, someone openly thanked him for all he had done over the years. The moment was simple, but it mattered. The woman watched him closely, seeing how uncomfortable yet touched he looked. It was the first time he was recognized, not as a roomer, but as a man. As seasons passed, their home became a place of warmth and quiet happiness. They worked side by side, shared meals, and rested in comfortable silence. Love did not arrive suddenly or loudly. It grew slowly, built on trust, patience, and shared understanding. The woman realized that gentleness does not always come wrapped in soft words or easy smiles. Sometimes it hides behind rough hands and quiet eyes, and the mountain man, once feared and avoided, had shown through his actions that a gentle heart can be stronger than any harsh appearance. What began as a difficult choice had become a meaningful life, one shaped not by fear or judgment, but by courage and compassion. Time moved forward quietly, the way it always did in the mountains. Days followed nights, seasons followed one another, and life settled into a steady rhythm. What once felt uncertain now felt familiar. The woman no longer counted days or questioned her choices. She woke each morning with a calm heart, knowing exactly where she belonged. The mountain man continued his simple life, but it was no longer empty. He was not alone anymore. Sharing his days with someone had changed him in ways he never expected. He still worked hard, still spoke little, but his silence now held warmth instead of distance. His home, once quiet and lonely, carried life in every corner. They worked together naturally. There was no need to give orders or explain every task. They understood each other without many words. When one was tired, the other noticed. When one was quiet, the other respected it. Their connection was built on awareness, not control. As the years passed, the village's view of them continued to change. People no longer spoke of the mountain man as someone to fear. Instead, they spoke of his reliability, his honesty, and his fairness. When problems arose, his name was mentioned with trust. He did not seek attention, but his actions earned respect. The woman noticed how people now looked at her differently as well. She was no longer pitied or questioned. She was admired for her strength and her courage. Some women quietly asked her how she had found peace so far from the village. She never spoke badly of anyone. She simply said that sometimes the truth is quieter than rumors. Their home became a place others felt comfortable visiting. Neighbors stopped by for advice or help. Travelers rested there for a short while. The mountain man welcomed them politely, offering food and shelter without expectation. His kindness was steady, never forced. One winter evening, as snow fell heavily outside, they sat near the fire, listening to the wind move through the trees. The woman rested quietly, watching the flames dance. She thought about how far they had both come. The fear she once carried felt distant now, like a story from another life. She spoke softly, telling him that she was glad she had trusted her instincts. He listened carefully, then nodded. After a long pause, he said something that stayed with her forever. He told her that before her arrival he had survived life. With her, he was living it. Those words were simple, but they held deep meaning. Their love was not loud or dramatic. It did not need to be. It showed itself in small daily acts, in shared meals, in steady support, in quiet understanding. They never rushed each other, never demanded more than the other could give. That balance kept their bond strong. The village slowly accepted their story as part of its own. Children grew up hearing not warnings, but lessons. They learned not to judge by appearance. They learned that silence does not mean cruelty and that strength can be gentle. The mountain man's story became a reminder rather than a rumor. As time passed, age began to show in small ways. Movement slowed, hands grew rougher, and rest became more important. Still, they faced each change together. When work became harder, they adapted. When energy faded, they found new ways to contribute. On warm afternoons, they sat outside their home, watching the mountains stretch endlessly before them. The woman often thought about how different her life could have been if she had listened to fear instead of curiosity. That single choice had shaped everything that followed. The mountain man never became someone else. He remained quiet, reserved, and thoughtful. But he no longer hid from the world. He had learned that being seen did not always lead to pain. Sometimes it led to understanding. In their later years, visitors often commented on the peace surrounding their home. It was not just the land that felt calm, but the people who lived there. Their presence together created a sense of safety that words could not explain. When the woman looked at him, she no longer saw the man others once feared. She saw the partner who had walked beside her through every challenge, the man who had carried her when she was weak, the man who had respected her when she had nothing to offer but trust. And when he looked at her, he saw the person who had chosen him when no one else would, the one who had seen his heart before the world did. Their story did not end with dramatic moments or grand achievements. It ended the way it had lived, quietly, meaningfully, and honestly. It proved that love does not always arrive wrapped in charm or loud promises. Sometimes it grows slowly, rooted in patience and courage. In the end, the mountain man was no longer known for his solitude. He was known for his gentle heart. And the woman who had once feared the unknown became the reason that heart was finally understood. Their life together stood as quiet proof that the most powerful stories are not always the loudest ones. Sometimes they are simply lived, one steady day at a time.